real-time data on the freight business for clients including Nestle, Unilever, and LVMH. Now it's warning the impact of COVID on shipping could last well beyond next year. Let's get more with Patrik Berglund. He's the CEO of Xeneta. Great to have you with us. This topic is something that everybody is talking about because these supply chain challenges, they're driving prices up as ports face a record backlog. Can you really pinpoint that this is singularly caused by the pandemic?
Well, Alison, first and foremost, thanks for having me on CNN today. I think we got to look back to understand why we're in this situation as of per today. Because what we're seeing today is not very far from what we've seen over the last 18 months, to be honest. It's just gone from really bad to even worse. We have a situation now with more than 100 vessels waiting to enter U.S. ports globally. There's hundreds of vessels stuck, and in particularly in Asia. And there's overall a container shortage. They're stuck at sea. They're stuck in ports. There's strained infrastructure, in particular in the U.S., shortage of drivers, limited port capacity overall. There's weak and sort of inefficient hinterland connections, and the results sort of from this is that this year is going to be hard to reach the Christmas season and all of that speculation. But really, what has brought us to this point is a series of events. COVID hits, right? Capacity got reduced because everybody expected that there would be less trade. On the contrary, with the lockdown, more trade happened as we shifted our spendings away from services and travel, right? And the hard thing about that is that it increased demand on a reduced shipping capacity. Then Brexit followed. Ever Given blocked the Suez Canal. We had lockdowns in Yantian and Ningbo. We had recently now South Vietnam locking down. Typhoons reducing throughput capacity in Shanghai. We've had strikes on the U.S. East Coast, congestions, and basically endless amounts of bottlenecks. And this is like almost a vicious cycle that we've been stuck in. And we're seeing the result of this as we speak, right?
And so this is clearly... I'll finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, I want to raise a conundrum here where there's three alliances that, is controlling more than 90% of global container ocean volumes, and they're reporting historical results. They're making more in a quarter than they've done collectively over the last 10 years. And we're heavily relying on them to ease the situation. And I guess it's a fair question to ask whether, they have the right incentive with those financial results to ease the situation.
So how do you see this easing up then? Where does this improve? I'm hearing warnings from industry groups of a global transport system collapse. Do you agree with that? And once again, where do you see the pressure, alleviating a little bit here?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure I would use the word collapsing, but there's a need to regroup and really look at the sustainability and how resilient our global supply chains really are. The longer term consequences of this situation is really that we need to improve the infrastructure supporting global supply chains, and particularly in the U.S. There's significant investments needed, and with that in mind, there simply isn't no immediate relief on the horizon. It will take years to improve the situation, way beyond 2022. And then with this comes, a risk of inflation as well, as these increased costs at some point will be passed on to consumers, even more so than we've seen already, right? And that sort of brings me to another point, that if this really is a new normal for the cost of transportation, we have to reconsider and revisit which commodities are even moved between which nations, whether it in the long term makes sense to continue moving them, or whether the increased cost actually justifies new trade patterns to emerge from other areas of the world, or even in some cases nearshoring. And these are even longer term consequences beyond 25 and 2030, because it will take decades to build up something similar to what we've built in the Far East for decades, right? On the flip side, I just want to mention that it's needed for this industry, for the shipping lines, to have a real fighting chance to invest in sustainability and to reduce their environmental footprint. And that, I guess, in the end of the day is beneficial for all of us.
Do you see companies, and you mentioned this could change trading patterns, do you see companies changing where their manufacturing is happening? So
the first thing that happens for businesses is that they look for stable supply, which is everything else than what they're currently getting, right? And COVID initially gave sort of like an appetite to think about multi-sourcing. Could you potentially bring your cargo from Vietnam or even South America and not only rely on China as a source? And they've explored this, and while sort of a period into COVID, they realized that there are genuine opportunities to maybe find some parts in Eastern Europe and some raw material elsewhere than the traditional sources. But building up enough capacity in that on a more global scale from other sources will take a lot of time, and the long-term implication from this situation is maybe that we are planning more nations will try to be less dependent on China as or even Southeast Asia as the delivery hub of the world.
Yeah, fascinating to see how these supply chain issues have caused this other domino effect in the way we see trade happen around the world. Great talking with you, Patrik Berglund, CEO of Xeneta.